Went camping for 2 days. Now the cops think I my neighbor. Grew up on this quiet suburban block where practically everyone knows everyone. A few doors down lived this old lady, Mrs. H. I'll just call her that for privacy, who kinda became my honorary grandma over the years. She'd bake me cookies, invite me in to watch old reruns of shows I'd never heard of, stuff like that. She had no kids of her own, so she treated me like I was family, and I loved hanging at her place. Anyway, last weekend I decided to do a solo camping trip in the local woods. Just needed a break from school stress, parents, all that. I was gone for 2 days, no phone signal, totally disconnected. Kinda peaceful, not gonna lie. When I got back, the first thing I did was go check on Mrs. H like I always do. She's usually outside on her porch, knitting or something, but the house looked empty. I knock. No response. I peek through the window, then figure she might just be napping or out with a friend. I let myself in with the spare key she gave me ages ago, she insisted, in case of emergencies. The place was dark and it felt off, like weirdly still. I called her name, walked around a bit, but no luck. So I leave the house and notice a police car parked down the street, a couple of officers just standing around. As soon as they see me step out of Mrs. H's place, they start walking over. My heart immediately starts racing because, come on, who doesn't get anxious when cops walk up? They ask me what I'm doing there, how I got in, and I explain that Mrs. H is basically my grandma figure, that she gave me a key, and that I was just checking on her. Then one of the cops kinda looks at me, real serious, and says something like, "We're gonna need you to come down to the station to answer some questions." I'm like, sure, but what's going on? That's when they tell me she was found unresponsive the day before. Someone discovered her with a plastic bag over her head, and there were signs of a struggle. I felt my entire body go cold. Mrs. H. The cops drive me to the station, and I'm basically shaking the whole ride. My parents don't even know where I am yet. At the station, they start questioning me. When was the last time you saw Mrs. H? Did you know she had any enemies? Where were you the last 2 days? I explain I was on a camping trip, no cell service, just me and my tent. They ask if I can prove that, and of course I can't, because it was solo. I have a few random pictures on my phone of the campsite, but there's no way to timestamp them if there's no service. Great, right? They tell me Mrs. H had a Ring camera that shows me leaving her house the day she likely died, and coming back again later. I'm like, yo, that must have been a different day or something, or maybe the camera's timestamps are off. They're super skeptical. I know I didn't do anything, but it's not looking good when the only person on camera near her place is me. Plus, it's not like there's any footage of a random stranger breaking in or anything. They keep pressing. Is there any reason Mrs. H would leave you money or property? Did she sign a will naming you a beneficiary? I'm like, not that I know of, but part of me's thinking, she was old and always said she'd want me to have some of her stuff if something happened to her. Could that make me look suspicious? Sure feels like it. Eventually, the questioning winds down and they let me go, but not before giving me this whole spiel about don't leave town, we might need more info, etc. I'm freaking out. My parents are pissed at me for not telling them I got hauled to the station right away, and they're also worried sick that I'm a suspect. Imagine explaining that at dinner time. It's been a few days, and the cops are still investigating. I have no clue if they have leads or if they're just watching me. I'm legit terrified. It's bad enough losing Mrs. H, who was basically my grandma, but now I gotta worry people think I did it. And my only alibi is I was in the woods alone like a weirdo, no proof.